All right, we're going to go live here. Hey, Chuck Holton here. How's it going, everybody? Thank you for being online with me today. It is about 10 a.m. in Panama here this morning, and I have a lot of you asking me what happened to yesterday's live. Well, it got taken down by YouTube, and I got a slap on the wrist from YouTube for mentioning one word in passing. It wasn't even part of what the video was about, but I just happened to mention one particular word in passing. It starts with a V, and it has to do with what happened back in 2021, and I got a bad boy notice, nasty gram from YouTube, and they took the video down completely. And so I had to literally go to like YouTube re-education camp in order to keep from getting a strike on my account, which will eventually result in my account getting completely demonetized. This is why it's so important that you go over to chuckholton.com and subscribe over there and support me over there. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start recording all of these lives locally, because if that happens again, I'm going to put them up over there. I've had a lot of people say, why don't you put everything over on Rumble? Well, because there aren't any people on Rumble. A video that will get 30 or 40,000 views on YouTube will get like 12 views on Rumble. I mean, there's no people over there. There's no way to make any money at it. But I would highly recommend that you go to chuckholton.com. You can subscribe. You can support me over there. And let's start pushing people to do that, to go over there and not maybe send the YouTube chats. Obviously, we're happy to get donations however you like, but if you send them through YouTube, then YouTube takes 30% of that, and it gives them more control over what you say. I mean, literally, I can't even mention certain words, even in passing, without getting my account demonetized. So the problem with that is now what is likely to happen is that YouTube will go back through the 1,700 videos that I have online over the last 4 or 5 years and find other instances where I mentioned a word like that, and actually will completely take my account off the air. I have some friends that's happened to, and that's very possible that could happen to this account as well. If this account disappears from YouTube, you'll know why, and you can find me over on Locals, where I will continue running over there. I think that it's unfortunate, but it's YouTube's platform. They can run it the way they want. And unfortunately, it's run by happy, naked, pagan dancing, frog licking, tree hugging, dirt worshiping communist hippies. And there's not much I can do about that. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. And what I'm trying to do here is not set your hair on fire with a bunch of conspiracy theories. Yesterday I was talking about the replacement theory, the great replacement theory that so many people have gotten their knickers in a twist about. And as it turns out, even on the video, while I was speaking, YouTube was putting a disclaimer on the bottom of the video that said that the great replacement theory is a white supremacist conspiracy theory, and there's no truth to it. Even while I was in the process of showing you this image, which shows this one actually is the top of it's a press release from 2000, from 24 years ago, from the United Nations, where the United Nations issued this report on replacement migration, saying how important replacement migration would be and how these Western modern countries are going to need replacement migration in order to survive. And what I was pointing out was that, in a way, they're right. That the United Nations is pointing out something that should be obvious to anybody, that if you make personal pleasure more important than engaging in the miracle of birth and enjoying the incredible blessing of children, and you make your personal pleasure more important than all of that, then yeah, there's going to be a problem with the society. China found that out with the one-child policy, and Europe is finding that out, especially Eastern Europe. Russia is in terminal decline. Many of the countries in Europe are now begging their citizens to have more children. They're offering to pay them to have more children because they see this tidal wave coming where there won't be enough people left paying taxes and working to support the people who are aged and infirm. And since the government has made that their responsibility, now it's coming back to bite them. And so I wasn't actually disagreeing with the United Nations. I was pointing out that it's our fault. It's our fault for making our own comfort, our own pleasure more important than having children. For making erotic liberty the first and foremost liberty in our nation. That's not what our founding fathers had in mind when they formed the Constitution. You won't see anything about erotic liberty, that is the right to diddle whoever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want, anywhere in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. You won't see anything about that. But we've taken the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which were based on the foundational principle of biblical values, family values, and we've perverted it or allowed it to be perverted to the point where it is leading us down a path to terminal decline, the path to death. And I was pointing out, this is what got me banned, I was pointing out that everything the left does points at death. And I won't go down the list again because it'll get this one banned, but I'll talk about it more over on Locals, on my chuckholton.com page. And you can go over there and read it for yourself. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. I want to sort of dispel another conspiracy theory. Okay, YouTube, I'm dispelling a conspiracy theory. I'm not engaging in a conspiracy theory here. Okay? Jeez. So what I want to talk about today is, and again, this may be qualified as a conspiracy theory, but it's not that it doesn't have a grain of truth. And so that's what I want to do. I want to rightly divide the word of truth with you. And I want to talk about the concept of 15-minute cities. Let's just go through real quick how we got there. We're seeing a tremendous amount of over-tourism around the globe today. Believe me, as much as I travel, anytime I am unfortunate enough to go to a place that most people would have on their bucket lists, like Rome, Venice, Paris, any place like that, you're talking about these places that almost everybody would say, if you said, what are some cities that you really should see before you die? They would say that those are important cities. They have become absolutely overrun with tourists. And that's partially because we live in the wealthiest society in human history, and travel has become cheaper. If you think about it, if you think about how cheap travel has become, you can reserve yourself a seat in the sky to go pretty much anywhere on planet Earth, and it costs you a few $100s. It costs you maybe 2 days pay for an average American to get on a plane and go almost anywhere in the world. That's mind-boggling. And how the economies of scale work out for an airline to be able to fill a $100 million aircraft with a couple hundred people, pay all the ground support crew, all the people that are on the airplane with you, the ticketing agents, and all that stuff, and send you anywhere you want to go for a couple $100 is absolutely mind-boggling. For a cruise line to be able to put together a ship that costs a couple $1 billion and has a crew of 1,000 people and put 4,000, they can pack 4,000 unlucky tourists on that ship and take them around the world and drop them off in places where they almost outnumber the residents of the town that they stop in. You can see how that would lead to over-tourism. And believe me, it is a thing. Like, you go to any of these, like any place in Greece right now, holy smokes. It's standing room only. The last time we were in Lisbon, in Portugal, beautiful city, wonderful food, incredible history, and standing room only. You're just like this. You're just sort of shuffling through the crowds trying to get through there. It's really unfortunate because these places used to be absolutely wonderful to visit. I'm fortunate enough to be old enough to have been able to go to Europe 30 plus years ago when it was still Europe. Lisa Wilkes, I got the video taken down for a word that had to do with the world-changing event that happened back in 2021. Something that we were all, they attempted to force us to do. That's as far as I'm going to go with that. Now, these places, even right now, in the middle of a war in Israel, that's the best time to be a tourist. Because in normal times, if you were in Israel on if you're in Israel on a tour before the war started, it's standing room only. It is standing room only. I mean, after the war started, I went and visited the Garden of Gethsemane, and there's a church there, beautiful church that's built over the stone that they believe Jesus knelt on to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane. And I had been there twice before and had never been able to even get in the church because it was so packed with people. And after the war started, I was able to go there and be literally the only person in the church. So, it's nice to travel to places where there's war zones. I get, that's a blessing for me because I get to see these things without the crowds. Now, somebody is disputing my claim that you can pay a few $100s and get on an airplane and go anywhere. If you're paying, this Zverk says, airplane tickets from USA to Germany, then Serbia cost $2,200 now. You just don't know how to travel, dude. You just got to get a little bit better at finding deals, because I just recently found somebody a round trip ticket to Armenia going from the United States through Europe for $750 round trip. And last year I found one for $680 or something round trip. You can get tickets to Europe from the United States for $300 or $400 round trip. And to give you some context, I paid $400 round trip the first time I went to Europe in 1987. And so the economies of scale that they've realized with global travel are mind-boggling. Now, do I normally pay $400 round trip to go to Europe? No, because I've got some other necessities, as in I want to travel on the airline that I always travel on, so I'm going to pay more to specifically choose my airline. I don't like to take 2 or 3 hops on my way there, so I'm going to pay extra for a direct flight. I do have status and miles and all that, but it doesn't make sense for me to use my miles because then I'm not accruing miles, which is what I really need in order to maintain my status. So I have to give my miles away to family and let my family travel on my miles. I don't do that. But I don't get a discount for having status. I don't get discounts. I just know how to find travel. You know, it's weird how the travel websites like Kayak and Booking and those guys, if you go in and you just put in your start point and your end point, you're not going to get the cheapest tickets. You're not going to get the best routing even. For some reason, those systems don't give you the best route to get to your destination anymore. You have to actually do some legwork and say, well, I'm trying to get to, I'm trying to get to Armenia, which is something I do a lot. There's no direct flights from the United States to Armenia, so I've got to go through someplace else, either Europe or Asia or the Middle East, to get there. And if I just put in on Kayak, take me from Washington, D.C. to Yerevan, it's going to give me an expensive ticket that is probably not the best routing. But if I say, well, I'm willing to take an extra 24 hours and spend a day getting over my jet lag in Athens or in Lisbon or in Madrid or someplace like that, I can actually buy two separate round trip tickets, one to Athens and one from Athens to Yerevan on the same airline even. But by buying those tickets separately, I can get a much cheaper fare. One of the weird things about getting to Yerevan is that if I go to United's website and ask them to take me directly from Washington, D.C. And give me a routing to Yerevan, it'll say, we don't have any. We literally cannot find you a flight. I'm not talking about a nonstop flight. I'm talking about even with connections, their website literally is incapable of getting me from the United States to Yerevan. But if I say, can you get me to Athens? Oh, sure, we have a direct flight to Athens. Well, can you get me from Athens to Yerevan? Oh, sure, we have a direct flight from Athens to Yerevan. But if I ask it to make that connection itself, can't do it. So anyway, all of that to say that travel has become, I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit, but travel actually has become easier. You used to have to call a travel agent to go through all that rigmarole. Now you just do it online, do it yourself. But it's faster, safer, and cheaper to travel than it's ever been before in history, in human history. And so people are traveling more and they are overwhelming places all around the globe, especially your big tourist spots. And so it's getting to the point where they're so tired of the tourists that they don't even want them there anymore. So, and a lot of this goes back to what I was talking about yesterday, that the root cause of this animosity, of this anger toward tourists, comes out of the left-wing environmentalist movement. When I say left-wing environmentalist movement, it's because I feel like they've hijacked the term environmentalism. I think, Christians above all we're the ones who are commanded to shepherd and husband the earth that we've been given, to take good care of the world we've been given. But as with everything else, the leftists take it and pervert that into a bad thing and take it for themselves and try to co-opt the concept of environmentalism and make it into their own religion. And so they and their co-religionists in the environmentalist movement have decided that tourism is their next target. That people should not travel to these places because they burn carbon-based fuel to get there, and that's bad. And so, I mean, I'll do a whole separate YouTube live about the fact that the environmental movement is based on an absolute lie that we're running out of carbon-based fuel. We're not running out of oil. If you stopped looking for oil right now, they're finding more oil all the time. And they're finding new ways to extract oil that they knew was there, but it was just too expensive or difficult to get it out of the ground. But if you just stopped all of that exploration right now, the amount of oil that is proven reserves that we know we have and we can get at around the world is enough oil to run the earth at its current level of consumption for only about 3,000 years. So to say that we're going to, the world's running out of fossil fuel is an absolute scam. It's a lie. And there's a very good book on the subject, actually several that I've read. And we can talk about that. If you want me to, I'll do a whole podcast about why the environmentalist movement is a scam. So what the environmentalists have decided is that tourists are bad. Tourists should not go to places to see them. Now, it used to be that tourists were good because, they bring money to places, right? I mean, tourists come, they spend their money. Many of these countries that are now punishing or penalizing tourists or becoming very unfriendly to tourists are countries that incidentally get a large portion of their GDP from tourists. So take Spain, for example. Spain, of course, has some of the most incredible tourist sites on planet Earth, Barcelona being one of my favorites. I mean, I love Barcelona. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. But now the green movement in Barcelona, the environmentalists in Barcelona have decided we don't like tourists anymore. And they started attacking tourists in their city. I'm going to show you here what that looks like. These are green activists that are spraying water on people, on tourists in Barcelona. They're putting tape up around hotels and restaurants and saying, we don't want any tourists. No tourists are welcome in these cafes and shops in our country. Now, the last time I went to Barcelona, my wife and daughter and I were robbed, or our car was robbed. We weren't in it at the time, but we got out, we went to the beach, we parked right at the beach in a parking lot. We got out and we walked 100 feet down to just look at the water. We were there 5 minutes, we turned around and came back and our car had been broken into and my wife's purse and my daughter's camera were stolen. This is because of, let's just say the crime levels have gone through the roof in places, in some of these tourist areas, especially in Europe. A lot of people blame that on immigration, on other things, but without a doubt, the crime level has gone up, and that I think is just commensurate with the number of tourists. More tourists, more criminals. I mean, not the tourists are criminals, but it's bait. Tourists are like bait for petty theft. And so it's understandable. It's not surprising, but there you go. So now the biggest worry that you have when you go to Barcelona is not that some gypsy is going to come rob you or some homeless guy is going to ask you for money or try to, break into your car or something. It's that some radical environmentalist is going to come, attack you, literally assault you for being there, just for being there. They want you to leave. Now, what they're talking about is destroying about 15% of Spain's GDP. They're saying that Spain doesn't need that large influx of cash that comes from the millions of tourists who come every year. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. But they're not the only ones. So I just looked up tourism-dependent countries. The largest ones, Thailand, Greece, Spain, Italy, Mexico, Turkey, Portugal, Croatia, of all things, and Egypt and New Zealand. Those are the 10 biggest countries that get at least 20% of their revenue from tourism. There are other countries that are smaller that get much more than 50% of their revenue from tourism, like Belize, Barbados, the Bahamas, places like that. But is it the tourists' fault? Well, look, this is one of the reasons why I like running tours to places like Armenia, because most people don't go to Armenia. Most people just don't think about Armenia as a tourist spot, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's a wonderful place to visit. It is like Europe used to be before it got covered with graffiti and flooded with migrants, and you know, the economy started to have difficulty, and you know, it's more homogenous in Armenia, so it's not as divided and angry. Israel is a nice place to go, but it can be absolutely overrun with tourists if you're not there in the right time. If you're going to go to Israel, I would say the best time to go would be like the middle of winter, sometime when the prices are lower and there's not as many people there. But even then, it can be very, very crowded. The couple of tours that I took to Israel were in wintertime, and it was still super crowded. So now some of these top tourism destinations are penalizing tourists or banishing them outright. They're banning tourism. So when I was in the Netherlands last year, I went to Amsterdam and found out that they were actually banning cruise ships in Amsterdam. Amsterdam gets the vast majority of its revenue from tourists. Cruise ships bring them 4 million tourists every year, and they were saying, oh, but their carbon footprint is too high. They eat up too much fossil fuel getting here. And so in order to get to net zero, we have to get rid of our tourists. And so they've now prohibited cruise ships from coming into Amsterdam. They've also been closing down 300-year-old farms all around the Netherlands because the cows burp too much, and they're trying to get to net zero. And so people have to eat. And of course, they're putting these farmers that have been in the business for generations out of business, all sacrificing them on the altar of the desire to be net neutral with regards to carbon. Let me just say, if your desire for green or being what am I saying? I just completely lost my train of thought. If your desire for saving the environment necessitates you destroying people's lives to do so, you're doing it wrong. Okay? And I'll say that one more time. If you're so rabidly trying to save the environment that you're willing to destroy millions of people's lives and livelihoods by taking away their livelihoods, by taking away their jobs, by limiting people's freedoms, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it for the wrong reason, for sure. You are worshiping the creation rather than the creator. Now, We're also seeing, in addition to outright tourism bans, a lot of places are starting to, or not starting to, continuing to add punitive taxes onto tourists. So there's, for example, if you wanted to go to Easter Island, they now charge each tourist $200 just to get on the island. When I went hiking in Washington State, this is my pet peeve. I went hiking in Washington State last week with my wife, and there was a beautiful lake we wanted to go to in the Cascades that I had seen online, and I wanted to hike up there and see it. And as it turns out, you can't just show up and get on the trail and walk up there. You have to buy a ticket to get into this lake, to get into the trail. It's an 8-mile hike, but you got to buy tickets. And the tickets, you can't just go online and buy a ticket. I don't mind supporting the park rangers that maintain the trails and all that. You can't just get online and buy a ticket. It's a lottery system because they only allow very small number of people to go in there every year. And that just chaps my hide. I mean, we're talking about national parks that are ostensibly, that belong to the people. They belong to the citizens of our country. It's government land, right? Government of the people, for the people, by the people. So that means that a national park belongs to us. And there are so many national parks nowadays that they put all these barriers in place to make it very difficult to get in. What if I'm a poor person and I don't even have internet? What if I don't have the money to pay for these, permits and everything that are required to get in? I'm just not allowed to visit my own national parks. That's where we've gotten. When I was a kid, I used to go backpacking every year. There was a nice man in our church. It was a great guy, former Navy special operator, who, I don't know, he must have owed my dad money or something because he used to take me backpacking every year. Me and some of my friends. And what a great guy. He's still around. Ken Strunk, loved him. Love him, love him, love him. He's a wonderful guy, a great mentor. And we would go up to Lake Tahoe. We'd go out to the Desolation Wilderness area on the backside of Lake Tahoe. And we'd hike out to a place called Stony Ridge Lake. Beautiful alpine lake. And we'd go right on the south end of the lake and right by the water. And there was a nice little flat spot there in the trees. And we would set up our tents and there was a campfire ring there. And we'd have a little campfire and beautiful. Waking up in the morning and looking over. It was some of the best memories of my whole life. And we'd stay a few days up there. So if you had to use the bathroom, we carried a trowel and some toilet paper, and you go off in the trees somewhere and dig a cat hole, do your business, and bury it, and you're good to go. I don't recall ever needing a permit to go. It was just, you just went out there, right? Well, I took my family out there a few years ago because I wanted to show them Stony Ridge Lake and that beautiful place that I remember from my childhood. So I took my kids and my wife and we went backpacking out there. Well, it cost about as much as a hotel room to get the permit for all of us, six or seven of us, however many we had, to go. If we had more than 7, we would have had to split into 2 groups because you're not allowed to have more than 7 people in a group, and you can't go the same place. You have to be at least a mile apart. If you go there, you had to get a special canister to put your food in. We used to just hang our food in a tree to keep them away from the bears. Here now you have to have a special canister that is the size of a backpack. It fills up the whole backpack in order to put your food in that's bear-proof. You're not allowed to camp anywhere around the lake shore because there's grass there you might crush. You have to camp up on the rocks someplace. You're not allowed to have a campfire at all. Oh gosh, no, heck no, no campfires. No way, that'd be too much fun. You can have a little camp stove, and you can warm your hands over the camp stove in the morning. And the worst thing of all, if you got to, use the bathroom, you're not allowed to go out and go in the woods like everybody has done since the beginning of time. No, you can't go dig a hole and do your business and bury it and that's it. No, you're literally supposed to crap in a bag and then roll it up and put it in your rucksack and carry it out with you. You're supposed to carry your feces around for a week while you're backpacking in the backcountry and then carry it out with you. I have to say, at that point, I realized it was time for some, let's just call it civil disobedience. Because ain't no way in heck I'm carrying my own feces around. I'm sorry, not that kind of guy. So this is what we've come to in the United States. And so this is the sheer lunacy of the environmentalist movement. Again, God created nature for man to enjoy. But now, the radical environmentalist religionists, because it is a religion, they say it's a sin for you to actually go out and enjoy nature in any meaningful way. They have turned it on its head. They treat human beings like we are a cancer on the planet, like we're a virus that should not be here. And I actually talked to a radical environmentalist one time, and he said, "Thank you, Manny. That's nice of you." This guy said, "We're just hoping to get the world back to a state where there are no human beings left. We just want the human race to die off so that the world can go back to being pristine the way it was originally intended to be." I'm like, intended by whom? He's like, Mother Earth. And I'm like, so you're anthropomorphizing a sphere of dirt, and so you're saying God. Oh, no, I don't believe in God. No, but that's what you're saying. You're saying that Earth is God, that this ball of dirt that was created is your God, and you're saying people were never meant to be a part of that. Somehow we're a freak of nature, and we should go away. That is, when you really boil it down, that is what the environmentalist movement is all about. It's not about saving the environment for the people. It's about saving the environment from the people. And we could go on and on and on about all the different ways that we see that manifesting in our society today. Okay? So now that brings us to this new push for the 15-minute city. And again, this is where the conspiracy theorists on the right have, I believe, gone too far. But they're not completely outside the realm of truth in what they say. So the conspiracy theory goes like this. The radical leftists are trying to push us all into 15-minute cities. Now, a 15-minute city is a city where you can walk to everything you need. You can get everything you need within a 15-minute walk of your house, so that you don't actually have to drive anywhere or fly anywhere ever again. And that will help reduce carbon emissions. Now, the reason I say this is a conspiracy theory is that some people just take it too far. They say, oh, well, they're wanting to do this so that they can lock us into these places and not allow us to leave. And it's understandable where they get that, because there are places in China where they're already doing that. They're already requiring you to do a facial recognition scan or have a permit to leave your neighborhood. They have locked fences all around your neighborhood, the various neighborhoods, and you're not allowed to leave unless you have a good reason to. And so, yeah, it is happening in some places. I can't see that happening around the world. It would be difficult to do that in many places just because of their remoteness or because they're out in the country. You know, there are still places that are rural in our world, and it's kind of hard to tell somebody in a rural sense you can't go to the grocery store because it's 30 minutes away. But it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. Here's why. So let's first define our terms. A 15-minute city, like I said, is a walkable city where you can get everything you need for your normal daily life within a 15-minute walk or bike ride of your house. And I want to say, first of all, there are a lot of places that are already like this. I mean, the town that I live in Panama, is a small village up in the mountains. It's about 2 miles in diameter. We're inside a volcanic crater, so that's as big as it can get. And pretty much, I can get anything I need without leaving our village. So there's a grocery store, there's a hardware store, there's a mechanic, there are restaurants, shopping, there's a clinic, there's a medical clinic. Not a great one, but there's a medical clinic. So, you know, this is the way that many people have been living for most of their lives. But, and also, if you go to many cities around the world, thank you, Rich, it's very kind of you. Please go over to chuckholton.com. If you want to support me, that's a good place to do it. But many people that live in big cities around the world have already been living in 15-minute cities for most of their lives. I mean, if you go to Yerevan, for example, in Armenia, pretty much any neighborhood in Yerevan is going to have a grocery store. A lot of places, they'll have the stores on the bottom floor of the building, and then all the floors above that are apartments where people live. And that is so normal there, and it's so abnormal to actually have a house, like a single-family dwelling, that when you fill out forms in Armenia, there's a mandatory field for your apartment number. What's your apartment number? And if you say, well, I don't live in an apartment, they just go like, what? They don't really know what to do with that. Oh, you live in the villages. Yes, I live in a village. Oh, okay. All right, that's fine. That's the only way they can fathom not living in an apartment. If you live in the city, you have to live in an apartment. That's what you do over there. And you're right. It's true. You don't see a lot of single-family homes in a city, in a big city. It's almost all condos and apartments. So if you live in an apartment in Yerevan, most people don't have cars, and you can walk to most of the places that you need, you know, grocery store, coffee shops, things like that. The problem that we have in America, at least in suburban America, is not so much a problem with the people choosing it, but a problem with the city planners choosing it and building our cities around vehicles. So the zoning laws make it all but impossible in many places in the United States for there to be a small mom and pop grocery store in every neighborhood. That's just not doable. It's not allowed. You know, you have places that are zoned residential, and you have places that are zoned industrial, and you have places that are zoned commercial. And they don't mix. That's not that way in many places around the world. In many places, at least commercial and residential are all mixed together. So in the United States, you have to get in a car and drive somewhere, or maybe get on a bus and go somewhere to get to a hardware store or a electronics store or a grocery store or go to the hospital. They're not going to have little neighborhood clinics for the most part. And I think this is a drawback in the United States because I think a lot of people would really not have a problem with if the grocery store was literally on the corner of your street rather than 5 miles away, a 15-minute drive away. I think that a lot of people would say, well, parking and all that, I don't want to mess with that, so I'm just going to walk or I'm going to ride my bike. That's fine. I need the exercise anyway. And believe me, Americans could definitely handle more exercise. I hate to say this, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything, but the very first thing that I notice every time, my family too, every time we go back to the United States, which is not that often, and because it's not that often, it's really noticeable. When I get off the plane in the United States, first thing I notice is like, oh my gosh, everybody is so fat. Holy cow. I've heard people say that it's not global warming that's causing the seas to rise. It's the fact that everybody's so overweight that's pushing the land down. That's a joke. But, look, even the U.S. government says that American culture is obesogenic. Meaning if you spend too much time in America, you're going to get fat. Now, I think that's starting to change because people are starting to get serious about and get more educated about how to avoid that. When I was growing up, I never heard anybody mention the word carbs my whole life until just a few years ago. People didn't realize that eating nothing but carbs, we thought that was healthy because you're not eating fat. Like, you shouldn't eat fat, you should only eat carbs. That was the base of the food pyramid, all the carbs. And what that ended up doing was making us just stratospherically overweight. And we're starting to learn and we're starting to get over that. So I have noticed that more and more people are taking it upon themselves to get healthier. And that's a good thing. And we're also getting smarter about, exercise and, going out and running is not good for you. It's not a good way to lose weight normally. Or it's not the best way to lose weight, let's put it that way. Because it mostly causes you to lose muscle. But that's another podcast I could do. I could do a whole podcast on the health stuff that I've learned of, owning a gym for the last 10 years. So suffice it to say that the zoning laws in the United States have made us less healthy and more likely to be burning fossil fuels as if that was a problem. It's not a problem, but a lot of people think it is. So this push toward 15-minute cities is kind of understandable if you see it from that light. If you say, yeah, this way that we live where we segregate people into these gigantic housing developments with a bunch of McMansions, just not a really good way to live. And we force them to travel a lot more than they normally would to get to places where the stuff that they need is. So fixing that problem, you don't have to create a 15-minute city. You just have to change the zoning requirements and start letting people open up small businesses on the corner in a residential area. It's not a bad thing. That's how it is where I live here. I've got a museum on one side of me. We've got a restaurant across the street. There's a grocery store right around the corner. There's a place where I get my hair cut. I can literally walk to. Everything. It's just like right here. And it's a nice way to live. It's not bad. But, and here's the big but. As with everything else, the environmentalists are taking this good idea of a 15-minute city and they're going to pervert it into something that is going to be more like a prison. I've heard politicians recently talking about how in the future what we need to do to hit our climate goals is start limiting people to no more than 3 flights a year. Start charging people based on the number of miles that they drive, taxes, extra taxes. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be against that. If you drive on the roads a lot, then I don't have a problem with you paying for the amount of driving that you do. If somebody buys a car and lets it sit in their driveway and only drives it to church on Sundays, I could see them being charged less in taxes for that. The problem is they're not going to get rid of the existing tax structure. They're just going to layer those taxes on top. And that's not a good thing. But they're talking about basically punishing you for anything you do, not just, they're commoditizing everything, making it a commodity and then taxing you on that commodity. Yes, monitoring us like babies, Eve Sparks says. That's right. So, what they're going to do, this is interesting because I had a conversation with a friend of mine in 2007. We were at a men's breakfast and we got to talking about this and ended up sitting there for a couple of hours talking about it. It was a very interesting conversation. And we were talking about, how do you think the world is going to get to the point where, like, it seems normal, like, oh, I know, here's a good idea. Let's make everybody take a mark on their forehead or their hand and not allow them to buy or sell or travel without that mark. That's what we'll do. How are we going to get to that point from where we are now? Because right now, to most people, that seems like a pretty bad idea. It's a pretty big invasion of my privacy, right? So how are we going to get there? And so we started talking about, well, if you were to extrapolate the current trends that you see in our culture, technologically, the trend toward greater and greater bandwidth. We're going to have faster and faster internet that allows us to do more and more online. Eventually, it'll get to a point where you have they say like anything above, I think, 64K. Right now we have 8K, I think is the top video, the largest video you can get. But when it gets to like 64K, your eyes literally will not be able to tell the difference between a screen and real life. Like they could put a window in your office and put a 64K screen outside the window showing you a video of some nice scenery, and you literally would not even be able to tell that it was a screen. And they have cameras that shoot 64K, but there's nothing to distribute that yet. So we're getting there. So, but imagine when the bandwidth gets to the point where you have a 128K screen that is literally the size of a wall, or is embedded in your glasses, or God forbid, in your brain. Yeah, Anami says 64K screens would take up so much energy. Right now they would, but they keep getting more and more efficient. So by the time they're ubiquitous, they won't take up that much energy. But imagine you get to that point where you literally have a screen that you can't distinguish the difference between reality and the screen. And it's, let's say, on your wall in your house, and robotics has gotten to the point where if I need a plumber, I just say so, and microphones in my house hear me say I need a plumber, in the same way that Facebook will probably now start showing me ads for plumbers because it's listening all the time. And a plumber just shows up at my house. A little plumber robot comes in, fixes my toilet, and then drives away. And the plumber himself, the man or woman who owns the plumbing company, They won't make house calls anymore. That's stupid. Who would do that? They just send one of their little bots to do it. So you extrapolate that technological, line out, and then you say, well, people are getting more and more worried about pandemics. All we need is another 1 or 2 pandemics, and there'll be a lot of people that won't leave their homes. There's a whole phenomenon of people in Japan who literally have not left their homes since the pandemic started in 2021. They're people who, they have a name for them. I forget what the name is, but they just order everything online. They stay in their room. They won't leave their house because they're so afraid of getting sick. And that's becoming more and more common. I never would have imagined. I mean, I've been to Asia and I've seen how people over there, everybody goes around wearing masks. Not everybody, but a lot of people go around wearing masks. And that's been a thing for years. That's just kind of part of their culture. And I always said, I'm very glad that will never happen in the United States because we're just too freedom loving. We're not going to wear a face diaper everywhere. But I just came from Washington State and I passed people literally who were out hiking in the forest when I was there illegally. Excuse me. When I was hiking, who were literally hiking with a mask on by themselves because they're so afraid to get sick. People on the airplane, 2 and 3 masks, gloves, still in the United States, this is happening. So imagine what happens after the next pandemic or 2 more or 3 more pandemics. So you start extrapolating that line out. Then you have like the threat of terrorism and people saying, oh gosh, no place is safe. I go to church, there's mass shootings. I go to, the airport, there's hijackers. I go to the movie theater and there's biological weapons probably. I mean, who knows? There's all this stuff to be afraid of. You extrapolate that out. And then you add in the environmentalist movement. And they're saying, even now, it's irresponsible for you to travel. There's these, I see on Twitter all the time, these Just Stop Oil clowns that are going around the UK and elsewhere, and they just put on road guard vests and then sit down in the middle of the street and just block traffic. Because shame on you for going to work. Shame on you for traveling anywhere and burning fossil fuels. Shame on you. Now, I probably would get myself kicked off YouTube if I told you what I think we should do with those people. But suffice it to say, it's a growing movement. And they're trying to make it shameful for you to leave your home. So we have increasing technology and bandwidth, automation, and all that sort of thing. We're increasingly automating the distribution process. So before long, you'll buy something online, it'll show up. This is already happening in some places. When I was in Estonia, I saw this. They have this. You order food from a restaurant down the street. They get your order. They make your order up. They call up a little robot that is about the size of a cooler. It opens up. They put your order in the cooler. They close it up. It locks. They punch in your address. And this little robot autonomously drives down the sidewalk, drives halfway across town, crosses streets, crosses railroad crossings, everything safely, navigates on its own to your house. You get emailed a code. You punch in the code on top of the little cooler. It pops open. You get your food out. You pat it on the head and it drives back home. That's already happening. That's a thing. They've done, when I saw that, I said, oh man, that's going to be a long time before they do that in the United States because some kids are going to love just taking a bat to those coolers and, bashing them or, the crime rate in cities is so high that somebody's going to be taking a crowbar to every one of those coolers and stealing all the stuff out of it. That crime rate, that unwillingness to pursue criminals is another impetus towards what I'm talking about. Because criminals kind of have free reign or are being given free reign, we can extrapolate that out, and people are just not going to want to go anywhere because we might end up in the middle of a crime spree. And so what we said in 2007 when we were talking about this is that it will get to the point where it is culturally inappropriate and mostly unnecessary for you to leave your home for anything. I mean, people are already dating and, even finding hookups online. Now, that doesn't mean that, you're not going to want to go visit your family or, something like that. But in many cases, people are just going to they're going to learn to normalize and let it suffice to sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with your loved ones through Zoom calls. People worked remotely. As it turns out, it's much cheaper in a lot of ways for companies to let their employees work from home in a lot of cases. And so it's going to get to the point where our culture starts to shift. I mean, it is shifting all the time. But where the Overton window sort of moves to the point where the things that we even see as ridiculous now will be not just normal, but expected. Where it'll be like crazy. Why would you get in your car, burn all kinds of fossil fuels, you irresponsible dolt, to go to a building every Sunday where they're likely to have a terrorist attack and sit down in a pew with a couple of hundred other people and share your germs with them and, God forbid, lay hands on them or greet each other with a holy kiss? Ugh. How could you do that? That's so irresponsible. You're just a bad person because you want to leave your house for something stupid like that. That's where we're going. That's where we're going with this. Now, you can call that a conspiracy theory. I call it a prediction. And you know me, I don't take predictions seriously. I mean, I don't take predictions lightly. I'm not big on making predictions, but this was a prediction that we made in 2007, and we are watching it come true. It is now getting to the point where there are literally people sitting in the middle of the street and castigating you for driving to work. Punishing you. There are literally people who are willing to destroy their own city's basis of income, tourism, sacrifice their own livelihoods on the altar of their green agenda. This is what we're seeing. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is what we're seeing. So the fact that, yeah, hey, 15-minute cities, great idea, but I can see it get to be to the point where it's not just a good idea, it's a requirement. And that's where right now we're entering into the realm of conspiracy theory, because they're saying, I read a bunch of articles about 15-minute cities for this podcast, and a lot of them are saying, oh, these right-wingers, they're saying that this is just a way for people to control, a way for the government to control the people, and they're not going to allow you to leave, and all this. And right now, yeah, that's not happening. But, and is a 15-minute city a good idea? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's a good idea for many people. In theory. The problem is it's going to be weaponized like everything else. And that's where they call that as conspiracy theory, but I think we'll just have to wait and see. There are lots of other things that have been called conspiracy theories that now we look back on and say, no, that was just a prescient warning. It seems like every year that, if you've seen that crazy movie, Idiocracy, where corporations have all sort of amalgamated into one massive corporation called Taco Bell that owns everything. And people don't leave their homes. They don't even leave their couches. They have their couches built with toilets in them, so they don't even have to get up to use the bathroom. And, you know, it is every year a little less ridiculous. One of the other themes in that movie, Idiocracy, is that the smart people don't have children. It's only the dumb redneck hicks that have children. And in the movie, that leads to the dumbing down of civilization. People just get dumber and dumber and dumber. Well, if they hadn't deleted my video from yesterday, you could go back and watch that, where I talk about how, no, the really smart people are the ones who are having children, because they are the ones who are not giving up the greatest blessing that you could have in life. And they are, by the way, supporting our society in a very tangible way. There's a church, thank you, MM, very kind of you. MM, I'd love it if you'd go over to chuckholton.com and support me over there. Again, because YouTube is kind of fickle, and not kind of, very fickle. And at any moment could shut this channel down. I'm concerned about that after what happened yesterday. I certainly would encourage people who want to support me to do so over at chuckholton.com. But we'll take whatever you want. It's up to you. I spoke at a church in California. I'm way over time, but I spoke at a church in California several years ago. I walked in. You've heard me tell this story maybe. Walked in and it was like 400 people there, and like at least 350 of them were little kids. And I was like, whoa, is this like a backyard? I mean, is this a Bible school, a Bible club, or is this like a daycare center? What? I thought I was going into a church. They're like, no, we're a neonatalist church. I was like, neonatalist, what's that mean? And they said, well, neonatalist is a theory that the best way for us to retake our culture is to outbreed the liberals. Because liberals, by and large, are not having children. They see children as a curse. We see children as a blessing. And so we're going to have as many children as we can. We're going to homeschool them and not allow them to be poisoned by the public school system. And then we're going to retake our culture by outbreeding. And I was like, well, I guess that's a way to do that. But increasingly, I'm starting to wonder if maybe they weren't onto something. I'm just starting to wonder if they didn't actually have a pretty good idea there. Now the question is, how can we get that to happen? Because most of us watching this are beyond our childbearing years, if the demographics on my analytics page are accurate. Most of us are too old to have a bunch more kids, although I'd love to, but my wife not so on board with that plan. Well, I think we need to stop lying to our children and our grandchildren and encouraging that before you get married, you've got to finish college, get a good job, have a house, have everything all nailed down, and then think about kids. So maybe, when you're 30 or so, start thinking about getting married. I think we need to start encouraging our children to get married and start procreating much, much sooner. What I tell my sons is, it's not so much about how old you are, it's about how mature you are. So let's work on your maturity and make you the man that you're meant to be when you're at a much younger age, when you're 17 or 18. Then you can start thinking about going out and starting a family because you'll have everything you need to do so. We've so delayed adulthood now till like mid-30s in our cultures that our kids, we're robbing them of the ability to have large families. And it is such a blessing. So, one tired mama, you got tons of time. You could have 5 or 6 more. Easy. Go for it. Get busy. What are you doing on here? Get at it. No, but so that's what I've been telling my children is, look, it's not about, I've got to have all these ducks in a row. The only duck you have to have in a row is, am I the person that I'm meant to be before God? And am I willing to fight through any battle to give my family what I'm called to give them, what they need? And if I am, and I'm 18 years old, go find a daughter of God and marry her and be happy. The biggest regret I will have in my life is that I didn't marry my wife sooner. If you do it the right way, if you do it God's way, you can get married at 18 or 19 and have a wonderful life. Yeah, you're going to struggle, but you're going to struggle either way. Life is struggle. You don't avoid doing things just because it's going to be a struggle. That's a good way to have a meaningless life. So, on that note, my youngest daughter, 21 years old, will be getting married here in about 2 weeks in the United States, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Her husband-to-be is only 20, but he's got his head on straight, he's smart, he's hardworking, he knows how to hustle, and I wish them all the best. That's exactly what I told him when he came to me to ask, what he should do with this feeling he had about my daughter. And I was like, look, if you are ready to make a commitment to her for the rest of your life, don't wait. Do not wait. Get it done. And I'm so, so grateful we've been teaching our kids that, because here I am, 54 years old, and I've got 5 grandkids. Well, 4 and 1 on the way. And we're just getting started. We're going to have a bunch of grandbabies if God is kind enough to give us that. What a blessing. What a blessing they are. I feel so sorry for people who, out of their selfishness and their desire for a comfortable life, out of their desire to have more fun, to not weigh themselves down with these rugrats, decided not to have children, because they will miss out on the unbelievable blessing of grandchildren. And so if you're a young person, don't believe that lie that it's better to stay childless. Don't believe what the world's telling you. Get married, have babies, stay faithful, and you will have a much more meaningful life than if you didn't. I'm not saying people can't have a meaningful life if they're single. Some people are called to be single, and that's fine. But most of us aren't. Most of us ought to be married. And it's a wonderful blessing if you do it right, if you do it God's way. All right, that's all I've got for today, folks. I appreciate you. Like I said, I want to say one more time, YouTube took down my video from yesterday because I mentioned in passing one word that is apparently banned on YouTube. It wasn't a profanity. It wasn't a vulgarity. It was just happened to mention something that that they tried to get us all to do. And YouTube didn't like that at all. There's they made a very serious nastygram up and sent it to me. I had to go to some kind of communist re-education online training thing and have a struggle session and admit my folly and my sin, and before they would give me any kind of absolution for that great sin that I made. And so it is very important, if you want to support my work, that you go over to chuckholton.com and just, it doesn't cost anything. If you don't want to pay, you don't have to pay. If you want to support financially, you can, but that's fine. But you don't have to. But it is important that you go and at least subscribe over there, so that if I suddenly disappear from YouTube, you'll still be able to find me. Okay? So I encourage you to do that. Thank you for watching. It does help tell YouTube that this is important to you if you just go hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. So if you haven't done that, that helps also. I recommend it. And that's kind of a way you can stick it to YouTube. And YouTube's like, oh, this guy's super popular here. No, there's more than 69 likes on this video. I see, how many likes do we have? 381. It does help if you go hit that like button. Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate you saying that. Teresa Mountain says question, and didn't have a question. So I guess I won't answer your question. All right. God bless you guys. Thank you very much. I'm going to get on with the rest of my day, and I hope you have a great day as well. So we'll see you